It's Monday, and you know what that means. Jersey First TV proudly brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk, and certainly I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, Top 50 Latino, as voted on by the Latino Spirit Online magazine for 3 consecutive years now, along with the United States Latino Affairs Initiative. And without a doubt, ladies and gentlemen, I'll continue to be the weapon of mass disruption, because my level of honesty right now in Garden State media, now more than ever, is truly necessary in this era of journalistic deception. That's right, folks. It's the most handsome face that runs the place. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Happy Monday. I appreciate you all tuning in here on this, the 10th of June. And I want to thank you once again for tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so right now on Facebook Live via StreamYard, also on the Jersey First YouTube page, as well as on Twitter, also on LinkedIn, of course, all of our social media platforms here with Jersey First TV. Folks, I can't not thank you enough for everyone that tunes in every single week, and of course, that checks us out on all of our social media platforms. Of course, if you haven't done so yet, make sure you like us on Facebook. Of course, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And certainly, if you don't subscribe to us on YouTube, what are you waiting for? Click the subscribe button, and you'll be automatically notified of all the outstanding content brought to you by Jersey First TV every single week. And of course, whether you get your podcasts on Spotify or SoundCloud, hey, download Jersey First and take our episodes with you anywhere at any time. And of course, whether you're going down the shore, walking the dog, doing some errands, grocery shopping, visiting that significant other, whatever it is you're doing, folks, I'm sure you have your smartphone with you. So why not take Jersey First TV and, of course, enjoy all the outstanding content brought to you, but I always say it all the time, folks, by the dream team of Garden State Media. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's always Jersey First TV. Brand new episodes of The Nader Narrative, hosted by the incredible Elizabeth Nader, premiere every Thursday. And, of course, brand new episodes of Bridging the Gap with AJ Malillo and Stephen Brumbillo, also premiere on Thursdays, of course, and every Monday night. Check your local listings, of course, for start times. Brand new episodes of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe go live every Monday night right here on Jersey First TV. Folks, you want to stick around for final thoughts? I'm going to have a lot to say tonight about, once again, the Jersey Journal and certainly their editor, Chuckles the Clown. Obviously, his legal name is Ron Zettlinger. I'm going to have a lot to say about Ronnie and, quite frankly, why Chuckles should continue to be embarrassed by the Jersey Journal. Of course, you know, it would be obviously my job to remind you all, of course, in recent endorsements, yes, folks, the Jersey Journal continues to be 0-6 in recent endorsement. I mean, they're looking like the New York Giants lately when they play their fellow NFC East rivals, and that record right there, 0-6. But I'll tell you more about certainly the ongoing embarrassment to journalism. And that is the Jersey Journal, of course. And folks, when we talk about ongoing embarrassment to journalism, folks, I got to tell you, you know what? It's only June, but people brought it to my attention, apparently, that when we look at, well, InsiderNJ.com, apparently the site has become unavailable. Perhaps maybe Mike and Ryan Graham have come to their senses and said, we're not going to put another nickel into this garbage site and keep employing all these garbage people like Pete Onelia, Max Pizarro, Jay Lassiter, Bob Hennelly, Alan Steinberg, and the rest of the Mickey Mouse Club there at Insider NJ. Folks, when someone said to me, hey, Fernando, go to InsiderNJ.com, and I saw that notification, the first thing that came to my mind, I was like, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go. I was delighted, folks. I was laughing. More on that during Final Thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. You definitely want to stick around for that. I'm going to have a lot to say about both Insider NJ and, of course, Chuckles the Clown, otherwise known as Ron Zettlinger. But, folks, first off, you know, I don't get to talk to too many journalists here in the Garden State. And let's be very fair. If you watch this program religiously, you know, I don't like a lot of journalists in New Jersey, right? The liberal establishment media continues to do us a disservice every single day, but I certainly don't. That's why I've sort of, you know, keep fighting against them all the time, whether it's the Star Ledger, whether it's NorthJersey.com, Insider NJ, the New Jersey Monitor, NJ Spotlight News. Folks, we all know the disservice the liberal establishment media continues to do us. So it's very rare when I get to talk to a journalist that I can actually respect. And folks, this week is that week. And I got to tell you, some lady friends were telling me, hey, Fernando, you know, you call yourself the most handsome face that runs the place. This week, you got some competition right now, folks. He's my guest. He is the he's the host of In the Middle, which you can hear on Fox Sports Radio New Jersey. We'll check out obviously the handles in just a moment, folks. But again, he's Joey Bloch joining us here on Real Talk. Joey, how are you?
I'm doing good, Fernando. I think you're way too generous with me. I mean, I know this is an ongoing competition. I believe Alex Sedan is also in the mix, as I remember from when you interviewed him a short while ago. So I don't know. It seems like I think there's too much competition for me. I don't know if you could give me that title, but I'm humbled to have it, and I appreciate being here.
No, man, listen, a lot of lady friends were like, yo, who's this guy you have on tonight? And I'm like, yo, I mean, again, it's some competition. It's always healthy.
I don't think compete with you, Fernando.
Oh, stop it. But folks, again, check out Fox Sports Radio New Jersey. Great show there in the middle, hosted by Joey Bloch. Of course, we'll get to the handles in just a moment. But folks, again, if you're just joining us, hey, it takes just 2 seconds. Click on the episode, like it, comment, and share it. That's what you can do to support Jersey First TV. Joey, we'll get to primaries really that have dominated the headlines in the last week. An exhausting election cycle so far in New Jersey right now. A lot of exhausting primary campaigns that came to its conclusion last week. But before we even get to that, speaking to a fellow broadcast journalist like yourself, while I do opinion journalism, I know that, listen, again, fellow Rutgers alum like yourself take pride in being a journalist. Seems like 4 little letters have been in the news cycle for the last week. Let me think. I think it's spelled OPRA. Why all the hoopla about OPRA, brother?
Yeah, that's an interesting development here in New Jersey. OPRA basically stands for the Open Publics Records Act, which is essentially a bill that allows journalists all across the state, if you are in the state or function the state as a journalist, you have the ability to request government records, depending on what type, but certain ones. And it allows you to see what the government's been up to, whether it's certain email communications, whether it's where they're spending the money on maybe the city park or the water system, but it can be more severe stuff like how certain decisions are made, like with COVID, for example, what was going on there. There are those concerns that now from journalists that this bill that's been passed weakens that, because there is this debate that's been going on essentially about, hey, what should we be doing in terms of reforming it? Because it's outdated. So they want to update how you can do this electronically. But obviously, it's kind of interesting because I'm not someone who, I guess, would consider myself part of the story. I try to remove myself as much as possible. Not that I'm someone who's ever had to file an OPRA request, but I've obviously viewed a number of them in my time in doing this. And it kind of something that affects all of us. I mean, I interviewed Charlie Cradaville about it, who you and I both know. We've had on both our shows, actually. And he was really upset about this because he uses OPRA all the time when requesting government records from the city of New Brunswick. And I've also had a number of other people on. I've had people on from Politico to talk about this subject. And the sense is that it allows less transparency, because in the state of New Jersey, where it kind of has this bad rep of being like one of the most corrupt states in the country.
That's right.
And the reality is that at the appearance of it, it doesn't seem like that is quite what it's happening. But Governor Murphy signed it nonetheless. He's like, yeah, I understand the concerns, but we have to make these updates. And it's funny because this bill originally was put on the floor in both chambers of the state legislature 2 months ago. Then they had to pull it. And obviously, strangely enough, one critic, the governor's wife, who was running for Senate at the time, wasn't a big fan. So they, of course, had to pull it back because, the old saying goes, you don't piss off the wife, whatever you do. So there had to be some amendments made. And then once that all happened, there were still some concerns, and that obviously it passed. But one thing I will say before we move on here, I do want to say it also is government activist groups, watchdog groups also use this in terms of trying to hold government accountable, whether it's for political purposes, whether it's for a cause like climate change or abortion or, you name it, it's out there. And they use it for that term too. They are also criticizing this because they say, wait, hold on here. Now we can't see what's going on. Are our priorities really being met? And is the government being fair and responsible with this? So it's going to be interesting to see whether there's lawsuits that come out of it or whatever, but it's something to watch for sure, Fernando.
Oh, I'm with you, Joey. And folks, by the way, if you're just joining us right now, it's 7:11 here on the East Coast. Again, takes 2 seconds. Click right there, like it, comment, and share the latest edition of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe right now as my host, as my guest tonight. He is the host of In the Middle on Fox Sports Radio New Jersey's Joey Bloch, fellow Rutgers alumnus, by the way, joined us here tonight live on Real Talk. Joey, great way to sort of concisely give us an understanding about why there's been so much of an uproar with OPRA. Listen, and I'm with you. I'm someone, again, who does opinion journalism. I obviously, love to sort of get a good landscape of what's going on, within the political climate in New Jersey. But I'm not like, again, and shout out to Charlie Crowderville. I know the editor of New Brunswick Today, a guy who I have an enormous amount of respect for, who has really been in sort of the crosshairs of a lot of municipal government, even people in Trenton, when it comes to not his activism. I mean, he's just doing his job. He's being a journalist. He's trying to hold government officials accountable, which I think at the end of the day, whether it's watchdog groups, whether it's local journalists, whether it is, nonprofit organizations in general in New Jersey, they just want transparency. And with everything that the emperor has done to ultimately ruin New Jersey, and I've been the biggest critic of the emperor, aka, Phil Murphy. I mean, you want to talk about a legacy. I mean, he has stained it enormously with his listen, we've come to learn his irresponsible COVID measures, what he's done to the economy in this state, taxes, coddling illegals. Now, I would think this is just a cherry on top for him as he thankfully leaves office later next year, but it's still 18 months away. I mean, can Governor Murphy do anything to salvage this atrocious legacy he's leaving behind?
Well, that's the interesting question, because it's ironic that Governor Murphy's numbers really haven't moved at this point until recently. They've been, ever since COVID, they've pretty much been in the 50-55 percentile. But what you're starting to see now is they're starting to dip a little bit into the 46 percentile, which you wonder, okay, why is that happening? Well, there's a lot of things. It could also be the COVID effect is over, where he was at one point getting a peak of 47% approval rating from Republicans. That's starting to go away, obviously. The independents being chipped off. But you are seeing some disaffection from Democrats. And that will be interesting to see whether that really changes or not. It could large part be because of priorities, because we saw down the shore with the offshore windmills, that has also infuriated a lot of people. There's that aspect. There's also the fact that he's been looking more towards national office, and there's been the rumors of whether he's running for president and how involved he's going to be with Biden. And maybe some New Jerseyans are like, this is what we voted for. We voted for a guy who's going to be our governor, not go run for president of the United States or cabinet position, or be involved with the national Democratic Party apparatus. So there are a number of factors. It could be as well also the financial state. Now, interesting enough, the first test of that was Tammy Murphy's campaign for governor, right? Or I should say Senate, because she was supposed to be the favorite. She's supposed to be the one to win it all, beat Andy Kim, this big blowout. The establishment was supposed to get behind her, and then she was supposed to win the general election. Well, as you know, Fernando, that's not what happened, because Andy Kim is the nominee for Democratic Senate candidate right now. It's not Tammy Murphy. So there is a sign here that maybe people are just done with the Murphy name, the dynasty. Also, there were accusations that there was a conflict of interest because the First Lady's office and the governor of New Jersey were running ads that kind of made Tammy Murphy more favorable in the early days of her campaign, despite the campaign not paying for it. Those are the allegations at play there. That could also be a factor of it. It could be that, it's also in the national environment. Biden is bringing the approval rating down to Democratic governors across the country. If you notice, there aren't too many that are currently above 50% because Biden's numbers are. We live in a partisan country, in a partisan time, where you can't really seem to get, no matter what, you can't seem to bring over the other side as much the way you used to. In New Jersey, as you know, the governorship can really go either way. So it's something we're going to watch for sure and see, maybe this will affect the results for next year.
No, certainly. And we'll get to next year, because obviously I really want to pick your brain about the gubernatorial race in 2025. But it's interesting you brought up the Queen, because I know last year at the League of Municipalities conference, I went to a lot of mixers, a lot of cocktail parties, and you saw Tammy Murphy and you saw Phil Murphy going from party to party. As it, obviously we remember, around October, November, once the incumbent, the senior United States Senator, more on him later, Bob Menendez, was indicted. Obviously, Andy Kim jumped right to right away. Hey, listen, I'm going to announce my candidacy for the primary in 2024. We saw Tammy Murphy. And I remember talking to people at the League of Municipalities show, like, do people really think that, what type of bubble do they live in? Do they think that, oh, no one's going to complain about this blatant, aristocracy that I think the Murphys have in New Jersey, where Phil Murphy was arrogant enough to think, oh, yeah, well, I'm just going to push my wife. I'm going to make sure every county chair gets on board or they're going to feel my wrath. And, thankfully, I think that the polling showed her, and her inner circle told her, like, listen, you're going to have to come out of pocket if you want to compete with Andy Kim. Now, listen, I got my complaints about Andy Kim, and we'll get to that later. But I just think that, if there was any karma, thankfully, to the Murphys, I think it was seeing Tammy Murphy humbled, because there was this sort of perception in Trenton, like, oh, she's going to win this primary, like running away with it, and she's going to beat the Republican in November in 2024. And with Phil Murphy leaving office, thankfully, in 2025, well, Tammy Murphy will be the junior senator for New Jersey. Thankfully, that didn't happen. What do you think really ultimately happened behind the scenes from what you're hearing? Because I know people were telling me that polling internally was like, you're not scoring high. People don't like this. The optics are bad. What were you hearing, Joey?
Yeah, Fernando, that was more or less what I was hearing too, was the fact that Tammy Murphy just wasn't resonating with Democratic voters for whatever reason. Andy Kim had these connections going in. He is, in fact, a congressman who has been around since 2019, won election 2018, got in 2019. He's been there ever since, and a fairly well-liked congressman, although not someone the establishment or even Democrats in general may have thought was ready for a Senate run. He was the guy in the moment. He ran in there the moment that Menendez was indicted and that all these people called on him to resign. Andy Kim immediately jumped in the race to try and unseat him at the time, because we didn't know what Menendez was going to do in terms of the Democratic primary. So, yes, that was the conversation essentially. It was because I personally was trying to get an interview with Tammy Murphy for the longest time, and it seemed like it was always like, oh, we need to wait for the next convention, next one. And the theory is that she needed these lines, these county organizational lines, to kind of get her campaign going, because essentially what these lines provide is county endorsements, county resources in each of New Jersey's 21 counties, where the Democratic Party essentially says, okay, you're our candidate. We're the ones, we're going to door knock for you. We're going to give you our county slogan, which you can see at the bottom of your ballot, and then you will have an advantage, which that's obviously a debate that's going on. Now, Andy Kim was like, hold on here, we can't have this going on. So he filed a lawsuit where it got rid of this system. And I actually have a prop here. I don't know how well this is going to work, but we're going to try it anyway. So it turned into ballot system, office balloting here, which you can kind of see where the candidates look different. I'll see if I can get to the exact spot where Andy Kim is. So you can kind of see it here. See how everyone is kind of, there's no structure, there's no line, where I'll show you on the Republican side, you're going to see this big line that's going down here, where it's all the way down. So you can kind of see it from. So basically, that's what we're talking about here. People have said that's an unfair advantage and that Tammy Murphy would have benefited from that. So Andy Kim sued, and a federal judge said, yeah, that's not going to work out. We're going to have to throw out the suit. And I think it was right before around that happened. It was right around the filing deadline. This case was still working out. The ruling didn't come down until April, but it was around March. The filing deadline was March 25th. I believe it was like that.
And actually, Joey, I remember that it happened during Easter weekend, like on Good Friday, which is relatively a very slow news day. That's when that decision broke about the federal judge. And let's be honest, I mean, that court decision has now changed New Jersey politics forever, where it was the last state in the country that still operated under the county line system. Now, again, Republicans, this primary cycle did not adopt that. We'll see what happens for 2025. More on that later. But I think that, to be fair, it's interesting. Andy Kim benefited from the line, those the 3 times he ran for the House seat. And now, hey, he was being smart. He saw sort of like collectively all these county chairs, rallying behind the governor, pretty much acquiescing to Phil Murphy because he was like, hey, you better support my wife or else. I mean, that was really at the end when you shave the apple down. That's at the core of the message. And Andy Kim, I think, was smart. He was proactive. He got the courts to rule in his favor. And we saw what happened, right? So let's sort of get to primary day last Tuesday. We saw Andy Kim decisively win the Democrat primary for the Senate seat for that campaign. Surprisingly, Patty Campos Medina, who's been one of the more insufferable left-wing activists in New Jersey, got, I think, around 16,000 votes. And I was like, wow, I can't believe people would vote for someone that's that much of an economic illiterate, in my opinion. Larry Ham obviously didn't really campaign much. I don't know what his numbers were, but Andy Kim ran away with it pretty decisively. What were your thoughts in terms of looking at the numbers, statewide?
It was quite fascinating for sure, because like irony of, like you said, was Andy Kim. The main reason why he got that is because he essentially got his opponent thrown out of the race by getting rid of these lines, because the line was Tammy Murphy's support. He had a lot of the grassroots support in this primary. He had the rank and file. Even you saw these conventions where they're more open conventions, what they call, where they nominate all the people. And he had that support and she didn't. So she essentially would have had that hurdle of going to convince the everyday Democrat to go vote for them. So nonetheless, as a result of that, Andy Kim got almost 3/4 of the vote in the Democratic primary, which, Fernando, as you can imagine, for someone who's not an incumbent, that's remarkable that he was able to do that. That puts him in a good strength for the general election. But in regards to Campos Medina, she is definitely someone who you might want to watch over the next few years and see where she goes, because regardless, she still was able to get a good following. She was this progressive part of the party who would say, hold on here, I'm not really ready to go towards an establishment figure or more of a moderate. And, I know there's the definition of that is relatively subjective at this point, but, whether it's a Tammy Murphy or Andy Kim, they're like, hold on here. We're not ready to have that conversation, whether it's the war in Israel with demanding a ceasefire, because actually undeclared, uncommitted got one delegate to the DNC. That's actually something. So that's a part of that primary too. That was interesting to watch, but it seemed to affect, well, it didn't really affect either one per se, but it's kind of interesting. That's probably why she did as well as she did. And I mean, there's obviously a lot to talk about on the Republican side, but just that Democratic side alone, it's interesting how she was able to get that support, despite Andy Kim essentially having all the lines, all the money, everything. And it just goes to show you, he's got a little bit of making up to do, but he's in a pretty strong spot going into this general election.
Oh, no, he certainly does. And we'll get to his chances in a little bit, though. And sort of, let's go to the Republican side. Listen, I had the chance to interview the two major candidates. I know there were two other candidates. There were 4 candidates in total. Didn't have an opportunity to interview the other two, but the two pretty much leading candidates were Mendham Mayor out there in Morris County, Christine Glasser Serrano, and South Jersey businessman Curtis Bashaw. Very interesting. Obviously, the Republican primaries did not obviously adopt what the Democrat Party was doing in terms of that lawsuit. The county line still took effect. Of the 19 county conventions, Curtis won 15 of them. And certainly that helped him, I think, enormously. I haven't seen what turnout was effectively yet. I mean, obviously, I haven't seen what the numbers are, obviously, after the vote by mail and everything else. But I know that Curtis won, I would say, pretty decisively. I know it was under 10 points, but I think even getting the county lines like he did, he came up pretty strong. And I think a guy that came out looking really good here, Joey, was State Senator Michael Testa. This is a guy who basically was running the campaign along with, the rest of the circle there, in the Curtis Bashaw camp. But Michael Testa, obviously decided to try to buck the system. Obviously, we know that Christine Glasser Serrano was the candidate endorsed by the 45th president. We saw that in Wildwood. I was there in Wildwood on that Saturday afternoon in early May with over 50,000 people there getting sunburned on the beach there with the former president. But, we saw that he endorsed her at that rally. And I think, a lot of people might say, well, that endorsement probably came a little bit too late. It was like mid-May. It should have been earlier. The bottom line is Curtis Bashaw had a pretty good apparatus, had a pretty good mechanism in place, though, Joey. He campaigned well, uses resources effectively, and now he's a Republican nominee in the U.S. Senate race. And obviously, we also learned by primary day, as reported by David Wallstein, the editor of the New Jersey Globe, the incumbent, the senior United States Senator Bob Menendez, has filed the necessary amount of signatures to run as an independent. Now, we'll find out what happens. His trial is still ongoing. We'll see. All it takes is one juror to, believe that the DOJ and the FBI has it in for someone. I mean, like, we haven't heard this before, right? Where it's not, it's not unlikely that happens. But, Bob Menendez, Curtis Bashaw, and Andy Kim are the three people that are going to be running to see who becomes the next United States Senator in New Jersey. What are you hearing about Bob Menendez maybe playing a little bit of a spoiler and maybe helping Republicans get a Senate seat for the first time since really the Nixon administration?
First of all, I have to say, if you were getting sunburn out there a month ago and you look like a guy who can take the sun, I would have been screwed. So hats off to you for doing that. But now going back in all seriousness here with Menendez, yeah, that's an interesting phenomenon here. Something we really haven't seen in New Jersey politics before is a guy who's been indicted and may possibly be convicted on bribery charges is planning a third-party bid for re-election to a seat where most of his party, if not all, don't want him to have it. And then a majority of the state's voters also don't want him to be reelected. So it's interesting. It's an interesting thing. But the fascinating part is that 8%, that 8% number is something that's been consistent in polling in terms of how well he'd do in the race and his approval rating. It's sticking. Now, you might say, okay, 8%, that's so tiny. Why care about the 8%? Well, when you bring it down, as the Emerson poll did, that brings this race to a single-digit margin. And this, again, before the primaries. So we'll have to see how it shakes out in the next couple of weeks and months. But it had Curtis Bashaw and Andy Kim within, I would like to say, 7 points. That's
Correct.
Something unheard of. Now, there was some polling where Bob Hugin back in 2018, the Republican, ran against Menendez, was around 4 points. And then, that was in the summer. And by the fall, well, we know that it was like a 14-point loss for him. So it could change. But Menendez being in it is interesting. And what I'm hearing, it's more about the fundraising for him. Because what a lot of people know is when you're running for president, as we're seeing now with former President Trump, when he has legal problems, you can pull from your campaign while running for office to pay for them as opposed to paying out of your own pocket. So it could be more of a fundraising thing. We're going to have to see. Menendez can pull his name off the ballot by August. So let's say He gets convicted and says, this isn't going to work out. He can just use the money he has and then simply, call it a day. Like, I'm not going to do this, and just pay off the legal bills and move on. Or he can stay in it as a quote unquote convicted felon. He could possibly be in this race, and it could be a 3-person race, because I'm hearing he can be quite stubborn, because he's not a guy who wants to back up, but he has a strong base in Hudson County. We saw that with the reelection of his son, Rob Menendez, as the Democratic nominee. We're going to have to see, obviously, blue state, blue district. So it's highly unlikely that he's going to lose at this point. But Menendez, he's clearly not going away. One way or another, we're going to be talking about him until November.
And listen, Joe, I'm Cuban just like him. We hold grudges, and we know that Bob Menendez publicly has said, hey, he didn't take very kindly to the Democrat establishment abandoning him. We saw that. He even went as far as saying, hey, listen, be careful, because I might spill some tea. I know where the bodies are buried. He made that very clear. Okay. And especially in Hudson County politics, we make a threat like that, who knows? But, I've said this, I said this to his son when I interviewed him, and I've said this to party insiders that reach out to me and talk to me on the basis of anonymity. Obviously, I don't want to sort of spoil my sources, but again, Joey, all it takes is one juror. And I keep saying this. All it takes is one juror to think that, the Department of Justice has it in for somebody, that the FBI has it in for somebody. Really, we've heard this before. And, again, now it's very different than what he was facing in 2017. Let's be very clear about what the allegations are. These are much more serious allegations But I say it all the time. Again, the presumption of innocence, due process. Okay, I believe in it. I believe in it for Republicans. I believe in it for Democrats. I believe it as Americans. Having said that, if he's either convicted or if he gets another hung jury and he goes into the fall up against Bashar and Kim, it's going to be very interesting because number one, we know that he's going to play that card as, hey, I'm the incumbent. I get it. You may not be thrilled with me, but hey, you know what? Let's say there is a hung jury. Well, guess what? There was a hung jury. Okay. There wasn't enough reasonable doubt to convict me. I mean, he can just say that. Now, whether or not that transforms into a debate platform when he is debating Curtis Bashar and Andy Kim, we'll find out. But I think that Bob Menendez staying in this race says a lot. And, if Andy Kim, I say this all the time, if Andy Kim, with all of his fundraising and all of his progressive grassroots, attraction that people have from, again, people forget Andy Kim's a guy who's not exactly a moderate. This is a guy who's voted with Nancy Pelosi and the far left in the House for every one of his 3 terms so far. So it's not like, can we stop pretending out there that Andy Kim's like, yeah, he's a nice guy. You want to go have a beer with him, but he's also a guy that has voted with the extreme left of his party. And I think at some point, I'm hoping Curtis Bashar exposes that, Joey.
Well, it is quite interesting that you bring that up. I agree that he does have a progressive record to hold. That's essentially why the grassroots activists got behind him. But I do want to push back on this point is he's won tough races, this guy. For example, in 2020, he won a district at the time, before redistricting, of course, that Trump won. They run hand in hand. So this guy, if anything, from the Democratic Party is probably the most prepared to run a race like this because he's run races where he's been down for the count. No one thought he would do it, and he did it. So he's someone who knows how to win in tough territory, tough years, tough times, tough issues. So I think we're going to see him put up the fight, and maybe it'll be competitive. But at the end, there's a good chance he pulls it out because he knows how to talk to independents, even though, he may have some agree with Biden a lot of times. He'd be like, hey, I don't really like the way people are doing business in Washington. I want to change that. That's essentially the message of this campaign. He wants to have a more transparent government, less corruption. If that's the message he's given, he might be able to overcome all this. But again, it also depends on Curtis Bashar. How effective is it? Now, he is kind of seen as a moderate himself. He's tried to come off as more progressive, but a lot of people have attached him with the moderate label. Does that work for him? But then also, can he bring that base together? That is the tough part for him because a lot of the people that vote against him were Trump people. You want to know why? Because the former president backed Christine Serrano-Glasner, whose husband worked with the Trump campaign in 2016. So he has that to deal with. And then also, and it's kind of the uncomfortable question here in Pride Month, is the fact that he is an openly gay man. Now, obviously, New Jersey, we've come a long way. In 2018, we didn't have necessarily that, but in 2015, the Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage, and then we codified it here in New Jersey a couple years back, and now it's legal. But the people he needs to bring in are traditionally Catholics. Now, as you know, and it's particularly older Catholics, they have some skepticism of people like that. Maybe they are more into traditional marriage. So he has to bring that coalition together and convince them. Because I asked him about this straight up when I had him on back in February, and he's like, well, you know what? I respect people's right to believe what they believe. And all I ask is they do that of me. So if he can communicate that message, maybe he brings them in. It's a question. It also could work great because for Democrats, they might like the fact that the guy isn't, the traditional old straight white male thing. They might like that he's someone different. So we're going to have to see. And he's also a rich guy. I'll point that out. The last thing before I turn it back to you is, can he relate to the little guy? Because he's got this Trump thing going on where, I'm this big real estate developer. I rebuilt Constitutional Hall. I redeveloped Cape May. I brought all this economic prosperity effect. But some people, I've also heard him called the Mitt Romney candidate, where Mitt Romney, nice guy, wealthy, but a lot of people see him as the wealthy guy, while Trump people, he's been notoriously, or you could say greatly called, depending on whether you like him, not the blue collar billionaire. He talks like a regular guy. So if Bashar is able to overcome all that, he could be competitive. It's something to watch.
No, I'm with you. And I think, folks, if you're just joining us right now, it's 7:33 here on the East Coast. My guest tonight, he is the host of In the Middle on Fox Sports Radio New Jersey. The great Joey Bloch joins us here on Real Talk. And it's interesting about Curtis, though, because as you said before, yes, he's an openly gay man. You would think that maybe try to pull in some votes within the LGBT community. But I think what's also interesting, though, Joey, and I saw it in North Jersey a lot, where there were a lot of Democrats running that didn't include Joe Biden in their literature. And that was smart. Now, what does Andy Kim do that? Does Andy Kim decide to run on the president's record, which is atrocious economically, foreign policy wise? I think we saw in one of those sit downs he did with David Cruz on NJ Spotlight News, Uncle Dave pretty much asked him, like, hey, what do you think about the ceasefire? What's going on in Gaza? And he had a very staunch, different view than the other two candidates in the race, right? With Patty Campos Medina and Larry Hamm. I mean, he seems to be viewed by some progressives as like, well, you're part of the establishment Democrat Party that, is very pro-Israel. We'll see how that, maybe works against him during this race. But the bottom line is, I think that, is Andy Kim going to gamble and want to run with Joe Biden? Is he going to be openly saying, hey, Mr. President, come to New Jersey and campaign with me? I think, listen, he's a smart campaigner. He's a smart politician. As you said, he's run through tough races down in CD3 in a part of New Jersey that went from very red to now solidly blue. It'll be interesting to see if Andy Kim will want to run with President Biden. Because, again, here in North Jersey, a lot of Democrats ran, and you can look at their literature. Again, up here in Hudson County, I can tell you, we saw Joe Biden, Ron Menendez signs on some telephone polls, Joe, but I can tell you a lot of literature, a lot of like flyers that went door to door pretty much had like, Ron Menendez and like local race people, not Joe Biden at the top of the ballot. So I think that's something to keep an eye out for when it comes to Andy Kim. Again, he has that grassroots base, but is he going to gamble with how unpopular the president is and want to sort of have his name attached to it? Those coattails aren't what they used to be.
Yeah, it's an interesting point to for sure whether, and that's something we're going to see across the country, is whether Democrats run with the president, because he's deeply unpopular in probably about 45 states right now. I think Maryland, Massachusetts, Hawaii, and there's like another one in there where he's not underwater. They actually really like him there. And it'll be interesting with Larry Hogan in Maryland. But bring it back to New Jersey. Yeah, it's going to be a year of candidates defining themselves. Whoever defines themselves the best and whoever feels it out the most, because maybe in the deep blue areas, they do kind of associate themselves with Biden. Maybe not. Like you said, Rob Menendez, he's probably going to steer clear of everybody because, he's got his own brand problems he needs to deal with. He doesn't need anything else to bring him down. You have that. Are Republicans going to run with Trump? That's something to talk about because, Trump's not popular in many parts of the state, but there's other parts where he's beloved. So do they run with him? That's something we'll have to see. And whether Andy Kim runs with him, that will be interesting because he's kind of been down the middle, right? He hasn't really said, whoa, we need a ceasefire in Gaza now. And that issue alone could kill the Democratic Party because it's the defining issue that's essentially dividing it right now. You have the pro-Israel, I would call the big money part of the party, because the Israeli lobby is one of the largest lobbying groups in all of Washington. Yeah. So they fund people on both sides. So it's very easy to get pro-Israel bills passed through Congress. But then you have the activist side. For years, it's kind of building up. And now we're here. Now they want a free Palestine, which is kind of a conflate issue because you have Hamas right now that controls the Gaza region. Yeah. And there is the more peaceful, we just want peace. We just want pro-Palestine. Then you have the more extreme people that have Hamas sympathies. And that is the problem, the Democratic Party, where you're hearing the pro-Hamas message rather than the pro-Palestine, and not sure how to deal with the pro-Israel and the two-state, because some people want two-state, some people want Israel to be destroyed, some people don't want Israel to be funded at all, some people want more money to go towards Gaza, some people want this. So the Democratic Party is going to have to work through that issue. And we're going to have to see who navigates this the best. Is it the people that are in it? Is it the people that are pro-Israel? Is it the people that are going towards their base who are pro-Palestinian? Are they going to win? That's something we're going to watch. One, with Andy Kim, whether he really defines himself on the issue of where he stands. Does he stand staunchly pro-Israel the whole time? Does he start to show more sympathy towards the other? We're going to see, but it's going to be a hell of a race, that's for sure.
Speaking about a hell of a race, obviously after primary day, we saw some races pretty much get defined. In the 7th Congressional District, we see the incumbent freshman representative Tom Kean Jr. now has a Democrat challenger, former New Jersey Working Families Party Executive Director Sue Altman. I would argue, Joey, probably the most interesting House race in the state coming up this November. I mean, we obviously have a incumbent who recently, again, showed his support for President Trump. Coincidentally, the same day he announces his endorsement of the president, or that he was supporting him, obviously was the day that, in my opinion, was that farce of a trial in New York City where the former president was convicted. And sure enough, his opponent, Sue Altman, who has a pretty, left-wing record. It's interesting about, now you got to run on your record, or who you're going to run with. I mean, Sue Altman has a lot to answer for, though, Joey. I mean, again, being the former executive director of the New Jersey Working Families Party, very, very progressive, very far left, at one time missed defund the police, still is someone that coddles illegals, someone that believes in a lot of left-wing causes, who, let's be honest, she's been a trust fund baby, and she's gotten some endorsements now. Sure, she's trying to hold Tom Kean accountable. And even after redistricting, Tom Kean was able to win that race in 2022 by a few points over Tom Malinowski. Sue Altman isn't Tom Malinowski, okay? And for all our supporters, I hate to burst the bubble here, but Tom Malinowski, at least from a policy perspective, could defend himself. Sue Altman can't do that. And people think that, she thinks the internet doesn't exist. People can just look up her record and what she has said and what she has done and her antics. I think this is a race that Tom Kean can pull out by a few points, but it might be a squeaker because she's still getting some support.
Right. This is definitely a race Democrats are nervous about, given the candidate selection. As you may recall, there originally were a ton of candidates running for this. Yeah. They were trying to throw anybody at the board. You had the mayor of Roselle Park, Joe Signorello, get in this race after previously running against Menendez, then jumping ship on that, coming to this, even though he lived in a different district. Then you had Greg Barton, who was the council president for Summit. He got in this race, had to get out. Then you had Jason Sudeikis, a national security advisor. He got in, had to get out. None of these people could get the money because she was able to build the grassroots, which, interestingly enough, doesn't always align with the Democratic Party, but in this case it did, which is quite fascinating given the record. The reality is Sue Altman is a progressive. She's butted heads with many people in the Democratic establishment, including the Camden Democratic Party, Steve Sweeney, the former state Senate president who's now running for governor. It is fascinating she was able to bottle this up because, as you recall, once the primary actually got underway, nobody was on the ballot. She was able to secure this field. And the reason why I think it was is because I interviewed her, and she comes off very relatable. Part of this district is very kind of hoaxy. You have the Hunterdon County, Warren County, where you're literally driving town to town, house to house, and there's sometimes it's like miles away in between because there's all this farmland. And she has this way of talking because she grew up in Hunterdon County. She has the connection. She understands how to talk to these people. And that's how Democrats have succeeded in rural areas traditionally, is they've talked the language. Even though she is more progressive, she's able to communicate it in a more moderate tone. And you're starting to see her move more towards the center. And we'll have to see whether she's able to do that successfully. But right, she does have some concerning things on her record. But I want to point out, Republicans are not, popping the champagne bottles right now either, because they have Tom Kean involved.
Listen, Joey, I'll let you finish. I'm sorry. I mean, by no means does Tom Kean have this wrapped up whatsoever. I mean, I'm fully aware that he's going to have to work in this race. And there's no question. He's going to have to really get people and really help mobilize that vote, as you mentioned, in Morris County, Warren County, Hunterdon. Again, there's been some Democrat establishment people like Representative Mikey Sherrill that's come out for her. I know Andy Kim has campaigned with her. That's all well and good. What's interesting, though, is that the state Democrat chairman, Leroy Jones, has yet to give a blessing. The Emperor, Phil Murphy, has yet to give a blessing. I talked to a lot of insiders that are like, hey, there's a reason why they've kind of held off on that, even after the primary win. There's still a concern about her because, again, you're right. She can come off as very relatable. I've talked to her at the League of Municipalities. Nice woman, can kind of tolerate me a little bit, even though I'm conservative. But at the end of the day, though, it's going to be interesting because when Tom Kean has to go out there and put campaign ads together, he doesn't have to Google very far to sort of have, because Sue Altman has a lot of rope where she can hang herself. I'm sorry, I'll let you finish.
Yeah, and I will get to Tom Kean, but in regards to Sue Altman, from my sources, Democrats are very concerned in the fact that they weren't really sure going into this thing whether this is winnable at all. And that was largely a part of the reason why Tom Malinowski, who was the congressman in this district, who got beat last time around, didn't come back into play. Because as you recall, by the numbers, Tom Malinowski in the old district would have won re-election in 2022, despite there being the quote-unquote red Whipple, which the red ripple that it was the wave that never came. So, Tom Kean is walking on that eggshell, but still the Democrats, it's almost like they see it essentially the throwaway race, but they're going to try anyways, because again, on the other side with Tom Kean, he's received criticism as well. Some people say he's not quote unquote MAGA enough. He's not with the former president enough on the issues with the Republican Party. He's got more of this moderate streak. Also, it's the relatability thing, because obviously he's got the name. We all know who his father is, the governor, former governor, Tom Kean, very likable guy. I've interviewed him multiple times, super nice, someone who's very popular in New Jersey politics. That largely carried his son, who a lot of people, don't know because he's been criticized not being able to get out there. He's not that big personality. Like
He doesn't do a lot of media, though. He doesn't do a lot of media. Let's be fair.
The only things I know of he's done New Jersey Globe, David Wildstein. He recently did actually something with Jersey First's podcast over there. Yeah. And then he does Fox News related things. That's a little hard to pump your brand on. And there is that. I personally reached out several times for an interview, not gotten a response at all. And if Tom Kean or his people listening right now, love to have you on, love to talk to you. I interviewed Sue Altman, love to interview you. But that's his thing. He's got to get out there. Otherwise, his message is going to be defined, because that is what happened in 2020. Malinowski defined him. He made him a Trump person, even though he kind of said, like, in a forum in a debate, yeah, I'm going to back Trump, but didn't really say much. He basically said, oh, this is a pro-Trump guy. He's a radical. He's going to come in. He's going to destroy everything, even though the Kean family is, known to be very moderate, which is where a lot of New Jersey Republicans are. So he needs to get that message out there, show what he's done in Congress, talk to people, knock on many doors as possible, and be a relatable guy, not as this guy who's worth a lot of money and who's a part of this big political family, because that's the key. It's all about relatability, especially in congressional races and a district like this. If you can't go out into Warren County and have a conversation with a guy at the gas station, you're screwed. So we'll see what happens in this race.
Oh, I'm with you. And I think that, listen, let's be fair about Tom Kean. I mean, his record isn't radical. I mean, again, if anyone really just takes the time to do the homework, it's not a radical. Yes, he votes with Republicans. He votes with his party. But this idea, though, Joey, that Sue Altman's trying to paint him as like this MAGA radical, that's not what his voting record indicates. And again, I'm trying to be objective here. I mean, I like Tom personally. And I mean, I don't mind Sue as an individual. I mean, I don't care for her policies. But let's be fair, too, about Tom Kean Jr. Right? Yeah, he is a moderate. There isn't anything you can really find in his voting record that makes him a radical. So I think that he's going to have to try to, overcome that perception that exists, because let's be honest, the establishment media in New Jersey isn't going to do any favors. They're not going to curtail to him. They're not going to not necessarily come to his rescue, but they're also not going to trying to dismiss or dispel the myths that maybe Sue Altman's putting out there about his record. I just don't see that.
Well, especially you have to remember back in 2020, remember that fight with the Star Ledger editorial board where he just decided not to even bother, because basically the guys who run the place were like, well, we have all these questions, and you're kind of avoiding the media and all this and that. And he's just like, you know what? I grew up loving this newspaper. He wrote a whole letter saying I'm done, and then they just endorsed Tom Malinowski, and I don't think he's even been bothered since.
Well, I
Really,
mean, Joey, let's be fair. I mean, Tom Moran is probably one of the more unlikable people in New Jersey media. Not just because I don't like him and he doesn't like me, but I mean, it's easy to get your feathers ruffled when the Star Ledger editorial board is as biased as they are. So,
well, there was a Trumpian factor into him saying, "Oh, I'm done with the media," which is something you're seeing Republicans across the
sure.
board do. We're done with the quote unquote mainstream media. But there is the fact is how many people do really take their advice from newspapers these days? I mean, you
No.
could even go, I'll take a local example down in South Jersey in the Democratic primary in the 3rd District, where Carol Murphy, she had the endorsement of the Philadelphia Inquirer. And guess what? She is not going to be a congresswoman because Herb Conaway, one of the assemblymen down there, ironically, her running mate in the assembly, beat her and did not have the endorsement of that paper. So there is a question of whether newspapers really have the value on either side anymore. And I guess
Sure.
that's the calculation that Kane had there. And we'll have to see whether it pays off because I don't think he's going back for endorsement anytime soon from
Oh,
those.
no. No, and listen, and Tom Moran, I think if you read his columns, I mean, again, folks, if you need a cure for insomnia, again, just check out Tom Moran. He cures my insomnia every time. But he's come up pretty much for Sue Alman. I mean, he pretty much has shown his dislike for Tom Kean Jr. He's sort of maybe not necessarily infatuated with Sue Altman, but he's sort of he has sung her praises on multiple times. So that's an interesting race for sure. Another interesting race, though, Joe, I want to get your thoughts on is the 9th congressional district where he's trying maybe the 3rd time's the charm. He's polled better every time. Billy Prempe, former serviceman, is challenging arguably the oldest member in elected government, and that's Bill Pascrell out of the 9th congressional district. I mean, Bill Pascrell right now is 87 years old. And he's a guy that has been a fixture in Passaic County and Patterson for decades, long before you and I ever were born. But Billy Prempe, despite not having a lot of establishment help, if at all, has done better. He did well in 2020, all things considering. He did better in 2022. He's hoping maybe 3rd time's the charm here. Again, there's a lot to overcome even after redistricting. There are parts of Bergen County I think that he can resonate well in. But at the end of the day, Passaic, Patterson, it seems like Bill Pascrell has a stranglehold on that part of the district. Can Billy Prempe maybe pull off an upset?
I think this is the ultimate sleeper in New Jersey politics this year because there are a lot of interesting factors that are actually from the national level happening in this district. One, the Israel-Hamas war was in play in this Democratic primary. Bill Pascrell, for the first time, actually had I don't know if I call it major, but a decent challenge he had to overcome because he got a last-minute challenge from a local mayor in the district who basically his cornerstone of his campaign was we need a ceasefire now, and Bill Pascrell has failed on this Israel. He's failed on this issue. He's too pro-Israel, and we got to get him out of there. And this was obviously a question. Okay, how are the Democrats going to play? Pascrell still won that. So he's overcome that hurdle. That's still thousands of people that went out and voted against Pascrell. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the uncommitted vote, they got a delegate out of there for the DNC. So this summer, there's going to be a lot of uncommitted people there. Do those uncommitted people come around to the Democratic Party, or do they stay home, or do they vote third party? That could be a problem for Bill Pascrell because he's already got problems. There's already people questioning his age, but he is a well-established politician. This man does not play around. He knows how to engage his voters. He knows how to energize. And as David Wildstein has said, because I've asked him about this several times, I think you were there when we kind of diagnosed this a couple of years back, is this district is one where if they see the money coming down, meaning the Democratic Party sees Republicans putting money in or something happening, they're going to put money in, and this district could be not as competitive as it could be. But to Billy Prempe's question, it's Bill versus Bill, by the way, which is, try to keep that straight. So there, he was only 10 points from beating him in 2022, which you're saying probably at home, okay, why do we care about 10 points? It's still a double digit. Pasquale has won races by as many as 30, 40, 50 points in a general election. That's not happening anymore because of the way it's redistricted and the coalition's changing. Even though it's become a more minority district, there are a lot of Hispanics, there's a lot of African Americans, and as we're starting to see, they're moving towards the Republican Party right now.
Yeah.
And if that changes, if that full change happens from Democrat to Republican, or even just a little bit, that could be problematic because as we saw, the outer suburbs of this district, that's where Prempeh was strong.
Yeah.
Now, if he's able to get into Patterson, he's probably not going to win it. That's going to be a difficult task. But if he is able to, get to the point where he can peel off enough voters to where it weakens him in Patterson, then we could have a real race on our hands. And it seems like the Republican Party is a little more behind Prempeh than they have been in the past. Do they put money there? Do they actually, get RNC resources into that district? It's going to be a question. It could just be a sleeper. Billy may have to do it on his own, but I think one thing's for sure, he's a guy to watch. He's not someone to disregard because if you're able to turn, 50, 30, 40-point races into 10, that is very, very notable.
No, and he's doing that, I think, without NJGOP help. And again, we all know how dysfunctional the NJGOP has become. I've been a vocal critic of Bob Hugin, their chairman. Again, we're going to find out whether candidates like Billy Prempeh, Scott Fegler down down the shore in CD6 against the incumbent Frank Pallone can try to get wins because, again, the NJGOP is exactly the most helpful apparatus. But moving on to November, obviously, House races, we have a Senate race. A few weeks ago, Joey, the 45th president came to Wildwood. I was privileged enough to get press credentials down there. I was in the press pit for hours, networking, viewing this event. Again, I don't want to get into the semantics of, how many people were there. I know that, people like Matt Friedman, who has nothing better to do with his time, wanted to file an OPRA request about how many people were actually there, and he actually filed an OPRA with the city of Wildwood.
Well, you might have a problem with an OPRA request now.
Well, listen, I can't find a better person to have that happen to than Matt Friedman, but that's a story for another day. But again, I could see it, and I took plenty of footage. It's on my social media. I have it there. Again, we can look at probably 50, 60,000 people on the beach. That's how full it was for support for the 45th president. I know that there were a lot of people in attendance. We have former NFL players, Otis Anderson, Lawrence Taylor from the New York Giants. We had the governor of North Dakota come out. We had other officials obviously coming to speak for the 45th president. I mean, what Donald Trump is trying to do, Joey, it hasn't happened since 1988 when George H.W. Bush won New Jersey, and won the 14 electoral votes that are comprised here in New Jersey. That's a long time ago. The electorate has changed. And even though that, yes, Democrats outnumber registered Republicans by more than 1 million, Republicans have caught up a little bit. The president is immensely unpopular. Joe Biden can't even stay awake, for more than, half of a session during D-Day festivities. Again, I think it's a little ambitious that Donald Trump, I'd love to see Donald Trump win the 14 votes here in New Jersey. That's a tall order with how blue certain parts of the state are that get the vote out for Democrats, especially for someone as incompetent as Joe Biden. Can Donald Trump win the 14 electoral votes in New Jersey?
Well, that really is a question, but there is data to suggest that he can at least be competitive here because there was a recent Emerson poll that had the two of them within single digits. I believe like Biden was at 47, Trump was 41, something like that. But the real question, how does RFK Jr. play into this? He's got that same 8% that Bob Menendez has.
Yeah.
I don't think the coalitions are similar. It just happens to be that number. How does that 8% function? Does it decrease? Does it stay the same? Does it increase? If RFK Jr. is able to get double digits in this race, is he's able to get up 25%, let's say, which would be larger than Ross Perot, who is the most successful third party in the modern era, that could really put a lot of states in play. But it could go either way because it could also affect Trump in the red states too, where Biden could be more competitive that way because there's a lot of these people who are just sick of both parties. But back to New Jersey, if RFK is able to resonate with enough people, it could potentially put a lot of areas in play for Trump that previously wouldn't have been. I mean, look at Cumberland County. It's been gradually moving closer to the right, but hasn't quite made it there.
Yeah.
But, Mike Testa, a guy who worked with Trump in the past in 2020 to try and turn this red, he is in that county. And then you also have Jeff Van Drew, who I spoke to a few weeks back, who is the current campaign chair for his New Jersey campaign. We're going to have to see. Van Drew has a plan. He wants to engage voters who typically don't vote Republican, and that is minorities. That is Democrats. And Van Drew's a guy who's done it because you recall, he was a Democrat. He was a conservative Democrat who turned a Republican seat blue, and then he ran as a Republican 2 years later and made it red. And last time it was even more red. So he's a guy who knows how to do this. And obviously Mike Testa is somewhere in the fold too. So those guys know how to do this. I get it, South Jersey. I get it's trending that way anyways. But major part, a lot of people from the Philly suburbs and Philadelphia are moving in. If they are Republican, that could change the game too. Also, these are traditionally Democrats. They're more Reagan Democrats, JFK Democrats who are not maybe happy where the party's going. If they're like, you know what, I've had enough of this, I'm going for Donald Trump, that could change the game. And also up north too. There's people in Bergen County on the wealthier side who are paying high taxes. They're having to deal with inflation and they don't like the way the economics is going. They could also say, you know what, I haven't voted Republican in a while, but I'm going to do it this time. If enough of that happens, then it's possible. At the very least, it's competitive. And the assumption would be if he's competitive, then maybe there's a couple of congressional pickups for the Republicans. It's certainly possible, Fernando. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out.
No, certainly. Listen, and if the representative Jeff Van Drew is watching tonight, and Mike Testa or the rest of the Trump campaign, again, we keep hearing all these discrepancies. Well, in New York, when he was in the Bronx, he had this turnout, and in Wellwood, he had this. I would just tell you, let's settle it once and for all. Let's get an event going before the NFL season kicks off. Let's have the president visit MetLife Stadium up by me. It's like 10 minutes away from my house. And if he fills the stadium, then, the slapnuts like Matt Freeman and the rest of, the Lollipop Guild in New Jersey media can't start bitching and moaning out, well, what's the attendance? I mean, if he can come close to filling up MetLife Stadium, that would be an enormous rally for the 45th president, Joey. So, I mean, again, listen, I don't want to sort of put the cart before the horse, but that would, I think, demonstrate significant support for him. If he could do that, if his campaign would even consider going to MetLife Stadium, again, it seats about 82,000 people. I'm not saying that the president could fill that entire building, but if it even comes close to filling up even 3/4 of it, or even almost all of it, I think that could also send a message to Democrats in New Jersey, like to your point, holy cow, these 14 electoral votes, I mean, let's be honest, could be in play. And I think that that's something that could really make the establishment down in within the DNC even nervous.
That's true. It is possible. That is the name of the game for Trump is, as you know, with these New Jersey rallies he's held, they've all been down in Wildwood, which is Trump country, essentially.
Yeah.
All that way. So what he has to do is, if he's serious about winning New Jersey, he's got to come back. More importantly, he's got to go to the north part of the state. Because as you remember from the 2021 gubernatorial race, Bergen County, Bergen County, Bergen County, we heard a million times during that close counting, when it was a close race for days, they were, what is happening in Bergen County? Originally, it was red. Jack Ciattarelli was leading there. And then as the votes started to come in, Murphy eventually gained the lead. Trump has to be competitive in Bergen County, if not win it. If he can't do that, the game is done. So in order to do that, like you said, you'd have to go to MetLife. You have to go to other places in the state. You got to go to the swing counties. You got to go around Somerset County where there's a golf course. That is the places you have to win. But the question is, in regards to the crowd size, that could still be a question, because people who go to Trump rallies typically travel all over the country for them. So you're going to see people who are not from New Jersey. But I want to talk about the Bronx for a second, because the point of who's there, who's not, The Bronx is the one exception to this. There were thousands of people who came. And you want to know what? A majority, and probably an overwhelming majority, were people from the community, from the Bronx. They weren't people who just like, hey, I'm in New York, I'm just going to go see the Trump. No, these were people who lived in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So,
oh, absolutely. Yeah. And within that area, within Westchester County, maybe some from Long Island. I mean, again, I think that the optics are there where, listen, I mean, it'd be great if he flipped New York. I mean, my God, listen, between the 35 electoral votes in New York and 14 in New Jersey, 49.
Well, that's single digits too, Fernando.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, absolutely. It'll be very interesting. Joey, before I let you go, folks, it's a little after 8 o'clock here on the East Coast. My guest tonight here is the host of In the Middle on Fox Sports Radio New Jersey. He's the great Joey Bloch, joins us here. And folks, again, 2 seconds. Like it, comment, share it. This week's edition of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe right here on Jersey First TV. Joey, let's move on to 2025 real quick because, there are 2 House races up in North Jersey, coincidentally, in nearby Bergen County by me and also in Essex County, where Representatives Sherrill and Gottheimer are being rumored as gubernatorial candidates. And we've seen, obviously, nearby Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop was the first Democrat to announce. Newark Mayor Ross Baraka has announced. Former Senate President and State Senator Steve Sweeney has already announced. We have seen Jack Ciattarelli announce. State Senator Bramnick. It was reported by David Wallstein that 101.5 FM radio host Bill Speedy will announce in just, I think, next week his race. We'll see who else announces. I'm going to say this here. And before anyone wants to chew my head off, hear me out. This is my hypothesis. You heard it today. It's the 10th of June in 2024. Because of registrations, I think that where Democrats outnumber Republicans, I think because of just the apparatus of raising money as quickly as he can, and because he's been gravitating towards very powerful legislators in New Jersey, like my state senator, Brian Stack, and other powerful, operatives and Democrats in New Jersey. Again, because of the dysfunction within the Republican Party, Joey, I'm going to call it right now, unless some catastrophe happens, I'm going to say that Representative Josh Gottheimer is going to be the next governor in November of 2025. I think that there's a lot of these Democrats can run far left like they are, Steve Fulop, Ross Baraka, Steve Sweeney, Mikey Sherrill, obviously, who we know, I think, is probably that girl that Leroy Jones and Phil Murphy are going to, get behind. I just think Josh Gottheimer can run in the middle, no pun, seize the pun there. He can run in the middle. And because of the dysfunction that exists within the Republican Party, I just see Josh Gottheimer being the next governor for all the factors that I just listed there. Where am I wrong, brother?
Well, first of all, I love the pun of the in the middle part. So thank you for getting that in.
Of course.
It's an interesting you say that because my sources have been saying up to this moment, Sherrill is the underground favorite for this because she's running a tough district. She is, in fact, a woman, and people want to see a female governor. They like that. She knows how to raise money. But Gottheimer is out there. I mean, you don't hear a lot of people saying, hey, I want Josh Gottheimer, but he's got the cash. He's been called the human fundraising machine. You want to know how much money is in his campaign bank account anymore? Fernando, I don't know if you know, $13 million.
Yeah, I'm aware.
That's a lot for a congressional race, which, by the way, is not very competitive anymore than when he first started out 8 years ago. So he's a guy who can compete, and he can essentially buy the race. And who did that before? Well, guess what? Governor Murphy. He also had a lot of cash. He put it in, and he was governor. So he can essentially come from behind on this. So he's a guy to watch. You never want to undercount him. But there are candidates in this race. Steve Fulop is trying to kind of crowd out the race here by getting endorsements from as many people as possible. He just rolled out some new ones from the mayor of Bound Brook, which is located in Somerset County, a tiny little town there, working class. And then Marlborough in Monmouth County, which has traditionally been Republican, but has a lot of Democrats in it in terms of the voter bloc. So you're going to see these dynamics of play of who can galvanize the support. Is Sherrill going to come in? Is Gottheimer going to come in? The two of them are at disadvantage here because they can't get into this race until they win their congressional races in November, which they're both highly favored to do because both their races are not competitive anymore like they were in 2018. These have been gerrymandered to the point where They are deep blue now. So they can't jump in this race till December, January at the earliest. Now, if anybody can do it, Josh Gottheimer has the money.
Correct.
Cheryl has the appeal. They could disrupt the whole thing if the line is still in place, because the county line is still there. It's kind of a mystery. The convention season is going to be pretty wild, where you're going to all these county conventions, and what you thought is maybe Steve Fulop or Ross Baraka thought they were making progress. All Cheryl and Gottheimer have to do is say, I'm running. Here's how much cash I have in the bank account right now. And they're like, oh boy, we're changing our vote here. So this is going to be a race to the finish to see how this nomination goes, because there could be as many 10 candidates who have been rumored to get into this thing. It's going to be fascinating.
Joe, the reason I think I have to push back on the Mikey Sherrill thing is just because, again, let's go back to the first topic we talked about, OPRA, right? I think Phil Murphy has a pretty bad legacy. And the idea that, an endorsement from Phil Murphy isn't going to carry the water it once did. And I think going into 2025, he's a lame duck already. And yes, she's a woman, former, servicewoman, Air Force pilot, has served in the House for a few terms already. But again, another one that has a questionable record, has consistently been siding with the far left wing of the party. And that's not who Josh Gottheimer is. He's a guy who I think can be like, hey, let all these progressives and these woke, the woke army kind of kill each other off. I can just sort of be the moderate, play the middle, and I can win this primary. Now, again, should he win the nomination? Like, I think he will. I mean, obviously what he has to do with the unions and the far left of the party in New Jersey, we'll find out. But I think, on Wednesday morning, November 6th, after he wins re-election, most likely, he can just wake up, make a cup of coffee, and raise $5 million in his sleep. So to your point, he can raise money. He's from that Bob Menendez, Mercury Public Affairs, Mike Solomon, like that circle of expert fundraising. And again, I was there last Tuesday at Rob Menendez's election victory party. Who was there? Sure enough, Representative Gottheimer. They have a good rapport. They're friends. And again, whether it's State Senator Stack, who I would argue, Joey, next to Governor Phil Murphy, next to Leroy Jones, next to State Senate President Nick Scutari and Craig Coughlin, the Speaker, I would argue that Brian Stack is arguably probably the next in line, probably the fifth most powerful Democrat or elected official in New Jersey. He can get the vote out. We've seen what he can do with his GOTV apparatus. Josh Gottheimer was at an event of his during the springtime. It's no coincidence, that he's latching on to Rob Menendez, who's got a good following, Brian Stack, who's got a good following. That could spell disaster for someone like Sherrill and Fulop and Baraka, I think.
It's possible, that's for sure. But you have to remember, they're going to have the advantage of going into this. Obviously, Gottheimer's trying to have an underground gubernatorial campaign happen here. You saw he was probably one of the most vocal on the whole congestion pricing matter, which has now been suspended indefinitely by the governor of New York. So it's an election year.
It's an election year. Let's wait until January 1st, 2025. Then, as I tell people, come talk to me then. Let's see what Kathy Hochul does, right?
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, she's up in 2026, so that'll be a fascinating race in itself. But the point is, he's getting into local issues that normally congressmen wouldn't get involved in. Running ads statewide, which, in case you haven't noticed, his district's up north, all the way up here in Jersey, not down here, not down here, not over there, up here. So the fact that he is doing this at all definitely signals he's interested, he wants to run, and he can be competitive in that field. And we'll have to see. Even on the other side, if you look at the Republicans, the fundraising definitely is going to be difficult, because the only ones who really have deep pockets right now are John Bramnick and Jack Ciattarelli. But Ciattarelli in particular, it's the fact that he has these people running against him, and he already was the nominee who got the closest that anyone had in 10 years, definitely means he's got a bit of work to do. And we'll have to see whether he's able to bring in the cash that he needs to go up against the Gottheimer. Even Mikey Sherrill's someone who can raise a lot of cash. Essentially, he's probably hoping to go against, if he gets the nomination, a Ross Baraka or Steve Fulop, where he can point to, oh, they're super progressive. They can't raise any money. And we'll have to see. Can they go for a moderate like Gottheimer? Again, I'll wrap it up with this. The Israel debate. He's pro-Israel. He's a moderate Democrat. Are they going to tolerate some guy like that? I mean, I don't know how far the war in Israel is going to go. Obviously, even if this individual war is over, the conflict is probably going to be here in 2025. How do they view that now that this has been exposed? That it's going to be a race on both sides. The primary is going to be interesting. These debates are going to be interesting. Who makes it, who not, and who ultimately gets that general election and wins. I'm excited. I'm not gonna lie. It's almost more fascinating the presidential race because you don't know where it's gonna go.
I'm excited too. Joey, before I let you go, listen, I don't say this enough on the air, but I'll say it to you now because I'm looking at you face to face. I have an enormous amount of respect and admiration for what you do. And I think that, you and I have built very different brands when it comes to journalism. I mean, obviously, I'm someone that is trying to corner the market on opinion journalism. Real Talk just celebrated 4 years on the air last week. And again, when I started, thank you. And when I started this show, in the height of the pandemic on June 1st in 2020, I mean, I bet on myself here. And I said, let me try to revolutionize opinion journalism. Let me, again, interview people on the right and the left. Let's have conversations. Let's have a dialogue. But at the end of the day, being different when it comes to opinion journalism isn't easy. And I know what you do is amazing. Obviously, you follow a very similar format where you interview everyone right, left, middle, elected officials, candidates, journalists, activists. I mean, you're doing great things with your show. When we think about what we're doing, really in the grand scheme of things, obviously, there are still some in the establishment media, though, Joey, that would look at someone like you and I and be like, well, I don't know about Joey being a journalist, even though you studied it at Rutgers, our alma mater. I know tons of
studied film, but I was I was news director of my college.
Sure. No, absolutely. And I remember, and a lot of people are going to be like, well, Fernando's definitely not a journalist. I mean, the New Jersey Society of Professional Journalists will disagree with them based on credentials they give me. But having said that, do you think that what we are doing and others that are podcasts in that format, do you think this is really the future of where journalism is going to go, not just in New Jersey, but nationally?
I think so, at least especially at the local level, because as we know, local journalism, especially in this state, has been greatly diminished.
Yeah.
Where there's budget cuts, there's less people wanting to do it, there's less stations, people get bought out, go out of business. It's hard. And being in the traditional format, it's hard to reach people because less people are frankly watching it. They're more into the national stuff. So you have to go on places like this, like In the Middle, like Real Talk with Fernando Uribe, Jersey First. These are the only places you're going to get that kind of point of view because there's only so many people. Otherwise, it's just going to be the Star Ledger, NJ Spotlight News, News 12 New Jersey, which again, even with them, you had Alex Sedan, who is a well-known political reporter, had that show where he kind of did something similar to I did. He got canned. He ultimately ended up running for Senate, and it seems like he's definitely going to be a man in the mix. But it seems like the podcast, it has to go that way, and a lot of people are more into it. Now, there is the fear of it, of course, where the podcast, which I respect what you do. It's good to have opinion people out there, but the reality is the market's becoming cornered now with, pro-liberal, pro-conservative, pro-democrat, whatever it is, opinionated podcasts. And that could potentially divide people more, which is a concern that I have, but it's good to have it out there. So I do see that being the future more or less, because if you look at all the major media forms that are out there, podcasts are really the only ones growing. Radio, and not looking too great. TV, it's kind of holding its own, but not really great. It's podcasts. So I think you and I are going to be doing this for a long time, one way or another. Or even if you and I decide to go do something else, it's going to be here when we're going.
Oh, listen, I'm with you. And I think that, and to your point about local journalism, I think that, we've seen the rise of like local tap-intos, local patches. And I think that those have been great resources. I think also, for example, New Brunswick Today, shout out to our buddy, Charlie Crowderville, I think, who does amazing work.
Charlie.
New Brunswick, again, great guy. Again, fellow Rutgers alum, love him to death. Haven't talked to him in a couple of years on my show, but I mean, he's a guy that has been in the firestorm of the news, right? Obviously, he's a guy who's been under the spotlight and under the microscope, too, of scrutiny, I think, when it comes to trying to hold government officials accountable down there in New Brunswick. But I would argue that, again, sort of the traditional print media. I mean, I saw obviously we know that the Star Ledger is going to be discontinuing their print edition. Other than like wrapping silverware, I can't think of too many uses for the Star Ledger, but that's me. But I think we're seeing a rise, right? And tapinto.net up here where I live in Hudson County, though, Joey, like Tap Into Jersey City, Hoboken, Bayonne, they're getting great traffic. The patches in Hoboken is still doing well. The Tap Intos in different parts of the state, I think, are doing well. I'm happy to see that because at the end of the day, listen, I'm a news guy, but I love reading the newspaper. I'm a sports guy, so I read the sports first, move into the editorials. I read it to the front of the paper, but not everyone likes print newspapers. We've seen it be a dying industry. Do you still think that, let's say 5-10 years from now, do you think the Tap Intos, the patches, are they still going to be flourishing?
It's hard to say. Digital journalism is definitely the future. If it's, a hard copy newspaper, hard to say. There are people who just like to have that in their hands, that no matter what, I can certainly tell you, people, my parents and my grandparents' generation, they love to sit there and read the newspaper, even though it's probably outdated in this modern world. By the time you read it, they like, getting up in the morning, getting a cup of coffee, and reading the newspaper. So there are those people, but the question is, how long do those people survive, and how many people my age care? I'm going to be honest with you. Spoken to my friends about this. None of them read the newspaper anymore. They're reading articles. They're watching podcasts.
But I mean more digital. I mean, again, the Tap Into.
Oh yeah, I know.
It's all digital, yeah.
In terms of that, it's hard to say. I think it's about what corporation buys them up, because if they're the still same local feel, then they can survive. But if they get bought up by corporations who have like certain mandates and people don't really understand the area, which it happens, as we're starting to see with some of these places, and they just start cutting jobs and everything, you're not going to see the type of coverage that you want to see. And if you don't see good type of coverage, then people aren't going to talk about it as much anymore. And you're going to see the CNNs, the Fox Newses, the MSNBCs, Wall Street Journal, you name it. Those type of sources are going to pop up more, and more people want to read that and be less informed on the local races going on there, like the congressional races, the governor's race, even the state legislative races. It's going to be tough to inform people of that. So it's hard to say. I mean, we'll watch the next 5-10 years and see if these places can survive. I mean, for journalists like you and I, we kind of hope it does, but do we know? I don't think anyone has the crystal ball on that.
Joey, what can we look forward to when it comes to In the Middle in the coming months?
Well, we are certainly going to be talking to a lot of winners of these primaries. We also have this week, we have an interview with Alex Sedan, who is the former New Jersey Senate candidate. So that is going to be exciting. I'm going to be talking to him about.
He's a great interview. I interviewed him. I think, I interviewed him.
I watched your interview. You guys did a great job, and
thank you.
Yeah, so it was very fascinating to watch him. And we're going to ask him, what's his next move? Does he say it? You're going to have to tune in the middle. We're going to be launching that this Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. So tune in for that. But also, we're going to be trying to talk to maybe some presidential candidates, some of the winners. We're going to talk to Democrats, Republicans. And also, we're watching that district with Jeff Van Drew and that Democratic primary now. It's not decided yet. Yeah. If we get a winner, we're going to talk to that person too. We're going to try and talk to as many candidates as we can before November.
Joey, you're amazing what you do. I'm in awe of you, man. You're doing great things. And again, I'm a little biased here. I'm a fellow Rutgers alumnus, so I'm always going to want to put someone over who's a Rutgers alum, So again, I'm a mark for that. And I'm a big mark for what you do, man. I cannot say enough how proud I am of you, young man, for everything you're doing within the middle. Before I let you go, I'll give you the last word here, but any handles, websites, links, when it comes to In the Middle here, I'll give you the last word, brother.
Well, first of all, thank you for the praise. You're very kind, and coming from someone like you who has so many accomplishments himself, it is absolutely amazing. I think that, and of course, go Scarlet Knights.
That's right.
Forever. But in terms of where you can find me, In the Middle, you can go to foxsportsradionewjersey.com/podcast. Again, foxsportsradionewjersey.com/podcast. It'll bring you to the Fox Sports New Jersey podcast page. You're going to scroll down till you find In the Middle. You click on that, and all the episodes will be there. The newest one will be at the top, and the older ones at the bottom. We put out new episodes every Friday noon at 3 p.m. And also, you can follow me on Twitter, which is at Bloch_Joey. Again, the way my last name is spelled on the bottom of the screen right there. So it's at Bloch_Joey. And also you can check me out on Instagram at joey.block.39. Again, that is at joey.block.39. Hope you tune in soon. And Fernando, I'm looking to come back soon. So we're going to have to arrange that.
And by the way, shout out to your mom. I know she's a big fan of the show, and I appreciate that. And I love your mom.
I bet you she's watching right now. Well, I actually know she's
well. I appreciate
Mom.
it. Listen, big shout out to Mama Bloch. Love you for watching the show. Joey, again, keep up the great work, folks. He is one of the best journalists out there in the state of New Jersey. He's the host of In the Middle on Fox Sports Radio New Jersey. He's Joey Bloch, my guest tonight. Joey, enjoy the rest of the summer. We'll keep in touch, and thank you for joining us here on Real Talk via Jersey First TV. Thank you, bro. And let's go Rutgers.
Let's go Rutgers. Hell yeah. Thank you.
Take care, brother.
Look forward to talking to you soon.
Have a good one, brother. Take care.
You too. Goodbye.
Folks, great episode there. Wow, it's a little after a while. It's like 8:20 here on the East Coast. My goodness, folks, we appreciate sticking with us here. Great episode with Joey Bloch, once again, the host of In the Middle with Fox Sports Radio New Jersey. You can check it out, foxsportsradionewjersey.com. I love listening to him. He's got great guests all the time. And being a broadcast journalist, I have to give kudos to a guy who I think so much about. And you know, folks, what I think of a lot of journalists in New Jersey, Joey Bloch isn't one of them. He is one of the best journalists out there. If you don't know who he is, what are you waiting for? Once again, check him out at foxsportsradionewjersey.com. He's got great guests, great content all the time. Yeah, I'm a little biased. He's a fellow Rutgers alumnus. So you know what? Are you, oorah, Rutgers rah. That's right. I say it all the time. I'm rocking the red every single day. And I know so is Joey Bloch there. Again, great guest tonight, folks. Check him out once again on Fox Sports Radio New Jersey. And of course, check him out at In the Middle. Great content you can check out all the time there with, once again, Fox Sports Radio New Jersey. Folks, you don't want to go anywhere because I got to tell you, we run a little late tonight, but great conversation, great breakdown about what's going on in New Jersey politics, obviously, after primary day, what to look forward to as the election day is coming up on November the 5th, and of course, what to look forward to in New Jersey politics in 2025. But folks, you don't want to go anywhere because you know it's time for final thoughts. Oh, yes, folks, I've been waiting for this one well over the weekend. And I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I like to go after some people in New Jersey media, people who continue to do us a disservice. And one of the people that continues to do us a disservice consistently up here in Hudson County is Chuckles the Clown. Otherwise, I'll refer to him by his legal name, and that's Ron Zettlinger, the editor of the Jersey Journal. And we all know what a disservice to journalism the Jersey Journal has been doing to us for some time now. But one of the things I want to take Chuckles to task on, okay, is lately what the Jersey Journal has been doing. And again, I'm always happy to cook Ron Zettlinger because he brings it on himself as well as his staff. Okay. But what's really, really interesting about the Jersey Journal lately, folks, is their endorsement record. Oh, yes. 0-6. My God. They're looking like the New York Giants when they look at the schedule and see their division rivals, the Dallas Cowboys, the Washington Redskins, and of course, the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, that's the endorsement record of the Jersey Journal lately. And what I find really, really funny is that somehow the Jersey Journal, whether it's Ron Zettlinger, its editor, or Joshua Rosario, or the rest of the Lollipop Guild at the Jersey Journal, have somehow convinced themselves that their endorsements mean anything when they don't. Okay? Now, again, 0-6 is a pretty embarrassing number. But again, we saw it recently where they endorsed Hoboken Mayor Ravi Bala in the Democrat primary this year in the 8th Congressional District. Folks, you want to talk about the kiss of death? You get an endorsement from the Jersey Journal, te jodiste, because you're not going to win a race, okay, when the Jersey Journal decides to endorse you. And what's really disingenuous about Ron Zettlinger is, again, if you read, and I'm not going to read you the excerpts. I mean, you can read it on your own. Again, if you need a cure to insomnia, read the Jersey Journal. But Chuckles decided to put out there in print that, yes, he has concerns about Ron Menendez, of course, because of what's going on with his father. And I get some people try to acquaint the sins of the father are cast upon the son. I get that some people believe in that. I don't personally. Rob is his own man. I've interviewed him multiple times on this program. I've gotten to know Rob Menendez. I've gotten to know Bob Menendez. Okay, I know them both. They'll take my phone call when I call them. Okay. But one of the things that was disingenuous about the Jersey Journal was, again, the way that they would crucify Rob because of his dad. But then they'd turn around and say, well, Robbie Bala has, these question marks. And now we're seeing, obviously, we've seen his ethical problems, that he's been censured by the New Jersey State Supreme Court, by the New York State Bar Association, and the New Jersey State Bar Association. And now we're seeing a lawsuit materializing in the city of Hoboken because of a disgruntled former city employee. But despite all of these indiscretions, Chuckles, the clown, would tell you, you know what? Ravi Bala concerns us, but you should vote for him anyway. That, folks, is that's the myopic level of journalism at the Jersey Journal. And thankfully, of course, Rob Menendez won that race comfortably. And of course, that endorsement for Ravi Bala was a kiss of death. Speaking of another kiss of death endorsement, let's move on in the last few years. Yes, let's talk about in 2023, where State Senator Nicholas Sacco, who obviously at the time was also the mayor, was running for re-election in the township of North Bergen against local businessman Larry Weinstein. Now, notwithstanding my concerns about the township of North Bergen, where it's been run by Nick Sacco and his minions with an iron fist for God knows how long, yes, endorsing Larry Weinstein was once again foolish, because we all know that, well, it didn't help Larry Weinstein in the slightest. Because again, endorsements by the Jersey Journal do not help candidates. They don't. We've proven that. Oh, you don't think it's a kiss of death? Oh, let's keep going. Let's keep going to the city of Bayonne, where in the spring of 2022, we had the mayoral race in the peninsula city of Bayonne, where Bayonne Mayor Jimmy Davis, again, some ethical issues that he's been confronted with. Yes, of course, the Jersey Journal editorial board decided to endorse Council President Sharon Ashnodrosky, which, again, was very critical of Bayonne Mayor Jimmy Davis. And we all know what happened. Mayor Davis romped Ashnodrosky by a considerable margin. Once again, that endorsement, the kiss of death. Let's go to more kisses of death here. Let's go to the mayoral race in 2021 in Jersey City, where, yes, there were parts of the city that Mayor Stephen Fulop was immensely unpopular in. But regardless of that, the Jersey Journal felt that Louis Spears, a relative newcomer, would make a better candidate and a better mayor for the city of Jersey City. Now, again, I like Louis personally. He's a nice guy. Not a bad word to say about him. But if you can't raise money, you can't mobilize, you can't get people behind you, you're going to get smoked. And that's what happened. But of course, the Jersey Journal felt that, why not? Let's endorse Mr. Spears just because we have it in for Mayor Stephen Fulop. Again, isn't a local newspaper supposed to be at least demonstrating some element of objectivity? Yeah, that's not the case with the Star-Ledger. With the Jersey Journal, a subsidiary of NJ.com, obviously, of course, also with the Star-Ledger. Another cesspool of journalism where, let's be honest, folks, they wouldn't know objectivity if it fell from the sky. But speaking about lacking objectivity, let's go to another, lack of endorsement in 2021, where during the governor's race, the Jersey Journal pretty much told you, hey, stay away from the governor's race. Where we know now, obviously, we knew it back then. I knew it because I was the only one talking about it on Real Talk. Okay, every Monday night, by the way, here on Jersey First. Okay, where Governor Murphy doomed the state of New Jersey. The COVID measures were tyrannical. We've all come to learn how bad they were. And unlike governors who got it right, like Ron DeSantis in Florida, like Greg Abbott in the great freedom-loving state of Texas, or Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota. Red governors who got it right when COVID. Unlike Phil Murphy, who, let's be honest, folks, sent people to their deaths in nursing homes, and his decisions killed people. Okay? To say nothing of the fact that these measures harm the economy. It got people to stay on unemployment a lot longer than they should have. Okay? The workforce was in disarray. He kept schools shut down longer than they had to. And guess what? We're still not even uncovering, folks, the extent of the damage of the learning loss that our kids experienced because of Phil Murphy's tyrannical COVID measures. But do you think the Jersey Journal would even talk about that? No. They wanted to belittle Jack Chiarelli, his Republican challenger. people like Joshua Rosario, who it's rich coming from Josh Rosario to talk about what's healthy. I mean, hello, when he's not stuffing down another hot dog, really, or eating that fourth muffin, really. Josh Rosario should be the last one to talk about anything that's healthy, but then demonizes people like Jack Chiarelli, who was against mask mandates, which folks we learned did not work, which we learned were useless, which we learned by seeing Dr. Fauci on Capitol Hill, okay, being held accountable for his reckless and irresponsible directives. But yet, the Jersey Journal had this hard on because, Governor Murphy isn't protecting Liberty State Park. With everything going on in New Jersey that was going wrong under Governor Murphy, somehow he got another term, which again is a reflection about the level of stupidity in the electorate here in the state of New Jersey. But you wouldn't know that with the Jersey Journal, with the editorial board, where we know that Governor Murphy was not, in my opinion, fit to be reelected. But you wouldn't know that from Chuckles or from little Josh, Big Josh, if you see him in person, okay? And for someone like Josh Rosario to criticize people like me because I'm not vaccinated or because I was against mask mandates, folks, have you seen Josh Rosario? Folks, you want to talk about healthy? The last person that should talk about being healthy or looking healthy is Josh Rosario. Okay, Josh? So, por favor, have a little awareness, my man, about lecturing other people about what's healthy when you're the least healthy looking person I've seen. Okay? But let's move on to the last endorsement, which I think was the most asinine in 2020. Okay? Where the Jersey Journal decided to tell you you should vote for Joe Biden. In the middle of the pandemic, when Governor Murphy kept the state shut down, when we were seeing what Democrats were doing nationally with lockdowns and COVID, somehow Chuckles told you that Joe Biden's a better fit to be president than Donald Trump. In the 4 years of Donald Trump, we had record low gas prices, no wars, funding for historical Black colleges and universities, right? Criminal justice reform, okay? A booming economy, interest rates were low, right? There wasn't inflation the way that it is now. So, folks, the next time you fill up your gas tank and the next time you go food shopping and you run into Chuckles, okay? The next time you see Chuckles, remind him, by the way, that it's asinine editorials like that from the Jersey Journal that get us where we are today. So, folks, this November 5th, it's the most consequential election of our lifetime. You may not like them. You may not like the mean tweets. You may not like the lack of decorum. But, folks, Joe Biden doesn't deserve another 4 years, another 4 months, another 4 weeks, another 4 hours, or 4 minutes. Somehow, Chuckles, Joshy, and the rest of the Lollipop Guild of the Jersey Journal, trust me, folks, when I tell you later on this fall, they'll find a way to endorse Joe Biden again. So the next time, again, you fill up your gas tank, you go food shopping, and you're trying to go home, maybe buy a home. You can't because interest rates are still up. Inflation is still suffocating Americans. But somehow Chuckles, the clown, will tell you that Joe Biden should be reelected. Folks, again, it's a reminder about what garbage endorsements the Jersey Journal. And speaking about, again, the ongoing garbage journalism at the Jersey Journal, guess what? You would think, and again, shout out to my boy Andres Acebo, the interim president at NJCU, who's been under fire from the Jersey Journal. I don't know why, right? Because you would think that in the 10 years of former President Sue Henderson, that the Jersey Journal would be more outraged about the reckless and irresponsible governing by the former president at NJCU. And all Andres Acebo has done is helped lift this university that was at near bankruptcy. But guess what happened? And shout out to my good friend, fellow Rutgers alumnus, and a member of the Pinnacle, John Hines, for his reporting on this story. Oh, what do you know? John Hines doing work because that's what he does, unlike the Jersey Journal that doesn't do any work. 16 lawmakers in Trenton have expressed support for the NJCU interim president, Andres Acebo, and for New Jersey State University. Okay, 16 legislators, all members of the Latino Legislative Caucus, the Black Legislative Caucus, and the Hudson County Legislative Delegation have all pledged their support for Andres Acebo. Because what has Andres done? He has done the work. He's made difficult decisions, okay, in trying to lift up NJCU from the red that it's in. Folks, my jacket isn't even as red as the red that NJCU was in. But what has he done? He's made tough decisions, and he's helped lift NJCU out of bankruptcy. This is a guy that when the Board of Trustees decides to get together this month, hopefully, they're going to remove the interim title and they'll make him the permanent president. But do you think at some point Chuckles, Joshi, and the rest of the Lollipop Guild of Jersey Jones will report on this? Of course not. Of course not. Because that will require, wait for it, that will require Chuckles, Ron Zentlinger, to have that four little word, folks, wait for it, 4 syllables, integrity. I'll say it again for Chuckles because I think he struggles with words. Integrity. It takes integrity to report on stuff like this. It takes integrity to report on the good job that Andres Acebo is doing for NJCU. But then again, folks, it's the Jersey Journal. Whether it's their endorsement record or in many instances, their garbage journalism. Porque, vamos a ser sincero, the Jersey Journal es basura. Basura. Es basura. And the next time you see Chuckles, tell him Fernando said hi. Next time you see Josh, again, when he's not stuffing another hot dog down his throat, tell him Fernando said hi too. But when it comes to reporting on real good stories like this, because this is important, folks, NJCU is escaping bankruptcy because of Andres Acebo, not because of anybody else, because of the leadership, the tenacity, and the guidance of Andres Acebo. Born and raised in Union City, hey, put his way through school, son of immigrants, I can relate to that. Getting multiple graduate degrees, I can relate to that. He's a guy you should admire, not admonish. But that's what the Jersey Journal loves to do, is admonish people. Shame on the Jersey Journal for being the garbage journalism that it continues to be. But then again, folks, when it comes to Chuckles, again, Ron Zentlinger, do you expect anything else? Of course not. Because once again, it will require Chuckles to have that forcible word. Wait for it, Ronnie, wait for it. Integrity. I'll say it again, Chuckles. Integrity. When it comes to integrity, we all know the Jersey Journal, they don't have any. Now, speaking of garbage journalism, let's move on to another part of garbage journalism. And folks, I got to tell you, and let me just check it again real quick here, just in case. Oh, some people brought to my attention that somehow the website for Insider NJ, the other bigger piece of garbage journalism, and we all know who it consists of, right? It's editor-in-chief Max Pizarro, Little Maxie, Little JJ Lassiter, Bob Hennelly, Alan Steinberg. Folks, a few people brought this to my attention. Fernando, check out Insider's website. I'm like, why? Trust me, just check it out. And when I saw this, I said, wait a second. Site temporary unavailable? It's been like almost 12 hours here. Could we be seeing the end of Insider NJ? Could Ryan and Mike Graham finally have come to their senses and said, why am I still spending money on this garbage site, employing garbage human beings like Pete O'Nelia, Max Pizarro, Bob Hennelly, Jay Lassiter, Alan Steinberg, John Van Vliet, and the rest of their contributors over time, right? Like Corin Frankfurt and the rest of the Mickey Mouse journalists over there, or wannabe journalists. Folks, when I saw this behind me, site temporarily unavailable, I just thought to myself, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go. Oh my God, folks. Christmas came early for Fernando Uribe. Could we be seeing the end of Insider NJ? Could we be seeing the demise of one of the bigger pieces of trash in New Jersey journalism, folks? Te lo digo. Again, I don't want to jinx it, but if this is the end of Insider NJ, folks, it couldn't happen to a better group of people when it comes to the disservice to New Jersey residents every day and the biased propaganda that just gets published every single day there. Folks, if this is the end of Insider NJ, let me tell you, it couldn't come a moment sooner. So let's cross our fingers and let's hope, folks, maybe this is the end. And if it is, the end of Insider NJ, folks, when I learned about this today, my reaction was very simple. That's all I was doing. We'll see, folks. It's not up yet. It's not back up. Hopefully, it stays down. Because let's be honest, folks, when it comes to doing a disservice to residents in New Jersey in the journalistic field, well, let's be honest. It's a Jersey Journal and Insider NJ. And those are my final thoughts. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank my guest tonight. He is the distinguished host of In the Middle on Fox Sports Radio New Jersey, Joey Bloch, a great fellow broadcast journalist and Rutgers alum, by the way. So let's go Rutgers. Again, I can't say it enough there. I can't say how proud I am about this young man and what he's doing with Fox Sports Radio New Jersey. Folks, if you haven't checked out In the Middle, what are you waiting for? Go on there, foxsportsradionewjersey.com, and check out In the Middle, and all the episodes are there. You can download them, archive them, take them with you. Why not, folks? You want interesting radio, you want interesting interviews, and you want excellent journalism, folks? You get it with Joey Bloch, my guest tonight here on Real Talk. Folks, I want to thank you all for tuning in here. Once again, thank you for joining us on our platforms, on Facebook, of course. Make sure you like us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And, of course, on YouTube. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Download Jersey First also on Spotify or SoundCloud. And, folks, hey, when it comes to excellent journalism, you can always rely on the dream team. And that is, of course, you always know, ladies and gentlemen, it is Jersey First TV right here. Obviously, brand new episodes of The Nader Narrative premiere every Thursday, hosted by the incredible Elizabeth Nader. And certainly, folks, brand new episodes of Bridging the Gap with AJ Melillo and Steven Rambolo premiere every Thursday as well. And brand new episodes of Real Talk premiere every Monday night. Check your local listings for start times here on Jersey First TV. Folks, I can't say it enough here, really, without all of you supporting us that tune in every single Monday night. Of course, you like it, you click on it, you comment, and you share it. Again, I'm deeply grateful. The traffic continues to be very strong. All organic, by the way, folks. Nothing boosted on this program, which I can't say unlike other, liberal establishment news sites, but that's not the case here. I really appreciate your support. And folks, by the way, special programming note, happy Father's Day coming up this weekend to all the dads out there, especially my dad and my uncle, who are staunch supporters of the program. And I love them for the humor, for the guidance, for the affection, for the support, in good times and bad for me. They love me and I love them back. Shout out to my dad and my uncle. I love you. Happy Father's Day. And shout out to all the dads this weekend. My good buddy Eric down in Kentucky, obviously with his 3 beautiful children, one of them being my godson, and all the great fathers out there. My buddy Mike Costello down there in Cherry Hill, and love him as well. And all the great dads out there. Happy Father's Day. Listen, Father's Day should be every day for all that you do for our families. We love you all. Once again, happy Father's Day on behalf of Jersey First TV and Real Talk. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always Real Talk right here with Jersey First TV. I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, top 50 Latino as voted on by the Latino Spirit Online magazine. Of course, along with the United States Latino Affairs Initiative, and certainly I'll continue to be the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media, because my level of honesty, now more than ever, folks, is truly necessary in this era of journalistic deception. That's right, folks. It's me, Fernando Uribe, the most handsome face that runs the place. I got a lot of competition lately here on the show, and I'm grateful for that. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in here. Once again, happy Father's Day to everybody out there. Please party responsibly. And always remember, if you can't be good, be bad, baby. We'll see you next Monday night here on Real Talk via Jersey First TV. Of course, thanks for stopping by. And always remember, stay classy, everyone.